What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and usually on Mondays I talk about X-Men things. Most of the time I am covering different storylines in specific runs of the X-Men, but last week I talked about a mini-series that was happening in the mid-2000s in the X-Men comics, and I wanted to go ahead and keep doing that for the rest of this month. I think there's enough minis in this time period that I'm covering right now that I could just go ahead and cover one every week in this month. And so today I wanted to talk to you about Kitty Pryde, Shadow and Flame. This is a 5-issue miniseries written by a guy I've never heard of before, Akira Yoshida. Right off the top of my head, that name does not ring any bells. I'm thinking this is somebody who maybe works more in manga or doesn't necessarily work in comics very often. I wish I had looked this name up before I started doing this review, but this is not a name that I have seen attached to any other comic book projects, I don't think. I'd hate to say that and actually commit to that and then turn around and look and see that this is someone who's done stuff that I've read, but I don't think that this person has done anything else that I've read. And the art is by Paul Smith, who had a run on the X-Men in the early to mid 80s, around the time that Secret Wars, the first Secret Wars, was going on in the X-Men comics. Paul Smith was doing the X-Men books, and so and he's an artist that is pretty well loved, and I really like his art. I like it here, and I like it in the 1980s. There's not really a discernible decline in his art style over the course of like 20 years. Most of the time, if you see someone who was a well-known artist back in the 80s, and then they're still doing art in the 2000s, and you look at the two different pieces from like a 25-year difference, most of the time, maybe this is just my experiences, but most of the time you look at their art and it's like, wow, this is a lot worse than what they used to do back in their heyday. But Paul Smith still doing really top-notch work here. It's not anything, this is going to sound mean, he is almost one of those artists who he always does very good, very solid work, but you're never going to look at it and say, wow, that's really awesome and really gorgeous. He's never going to make anyone's top 10 lists like a lot of other artists, but he never produces bad subpar art. He is always producing quality work that's just kind of there. I like this work a lot, but it's not something that I would put in my top 5 list of artists, but at the same time, good art that's very quality, very good stuff, is sometimes can make or break a comic book. And once you have an artist like Paul Smith, let's say he's working on a book for a very long time, and then he leaves, and then someone else comes along who's a lot worse, then suddenly you're realizing how good you had it with Paul Smith, even though you never necessarily appreciated what you had when he was there. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. Basically, very long story short, I like Paul Smith's art. So let me talk about this book after like 5 minutes of rambling. This is a 5-issue miniseries. We jump right into the story. In like page 2, Kitty Pryde goes to Japan. There's this green dragon that you can see right here. In the 80s, right after Secret Wars, the first Secret Wars, the X-Men came back from Battleworld, and they were in Japan, and there was this gigantic dragon, this green guy, actually it's a girl, and it came from Battleworld, I believe, and Lockheed fell in love with this dragon, and then when they came back to Japan, this dragon had become gigantic somehow. I think it was just an accident, that the Beyonder accidentally made it huge, maybe, and then for one issue, we get this cute little two dragons in love story that's set in Japan, and then I don't think we ever saw the green dragon again, and then this story is kicked off with somebody sending Kitty Pryde a postcard saying, hey, we've got your dragon, come and take the dragon back, we'll meet you at this airport at this time. She goes there, there's this Japanese section of the government that is saying they basically investigate the paranormal, and they claim that they have the dragon at first, or they at least imply that they have the dragon, but then they're like, actually, we used to have it, and then it was kidnapped by these ninja. And at first they're telling her that these ninja are actually a part of the Hand, which is a group of ninja that fight Daredevil very frequently. Then we find out, no, they're not part of the Hand. They are actually followers of the demon Ogun. Ogun is a character from another Kitty Pryde miniseries back in the 1980s where Wolverine kind of trained Kitty to become a ninja, and Ogun was this evil demon that also trained Kitty. These guys are followers of Ogun, and we find out that because Kitty Pryde allegedly killed Ogun, we find out she didn't actually kill Ogun, but these people think that she did. Because Kitty killed Ogun, they want her to be their new leader, and they are a criminal gang, and they're wanting to cement their place place in the criminal underworld in Japan. And Kitty says, okay, how about this? Instead of me being your boss, I'm going to go and get you this really powerful sword from the Silver Samurai, who works with the Hand, I believe. I think they said that in the story, that he works with the Hand. So she's going to go and get this sword and then give it to these guys. And basically, it's all a big double cross. Silver Samurai is actually working with Kitty. And then you're not entirely ever sure what this Japanese government group is up to, but you find out at the very end, basically, these ninja, they want Kitty to be their boss. The Japanese government group, they want this special sword that this ninja group has, not the one that the Silver Samurai has, but a different sword. And Kitty, she just wants the Green Dragon freed. And so this is a story that, on the one hand, it's very straightforward, not at all confusing or needlessly complicated, but at the same time, it does every once in a while offer you a nice little twist on the story, where it's like, oh, you think that this thing is happening, but then something else happens instead. For example, at first you're told that this group of ninja are connected to the Hand, then you're told no, they're not, and then you're thinking these guys want Kitty Pryde dead. Turns out they want her to be their new leader. And then you're thinking that the Green Dragon is actually being held captive by these guys. Turns out the Green Dragon had befriended the leader of this group of ninja. And stuff like that, that might be a little bit of a spoiler, not really, but stuff like that, you're thinking, okay, this is a pretty straightforward story, and just when you're thinking that things are pretty comfortable for you, it takes a twist, and it goes in a direction you're not expecting, and that's very masterful storytelling here. Again, in the same way that Paul Smith's art is serviceable, but you're not necessarily going to notice how good it is, this storytelling, it's not anything that anybody is going to write home about, but at the same time, this is very solid writing. This is very good writing. The story is written very well, and I'm kind of surprised that this miniseries didn't get more love. I remember reading this years ago, and I remember thinking, yeah, this is pretty fun, and then I kind of just put it on my shelf and forgot about it, and now that I've reread it, I'm thinking this is a lot of fun, and I'm surprised that here we are probably about 10 years after the story came out. I'm surprised that not as many people liked it as what they did, or maybe they did like it, and maybe like me, they enjoyed it, but then they put it on their shelves and forgot about it. But I'm surprised that this story didn't get more love and attention than what I feel like it deserves. I will say, I have gone on record before saying that I do not like Kitty Pryde. She is one of my least favorite X-Men characters. Here, this story does not make me hate her. I'm not going to go so far as to say that this story makes me love her. At no point does it do anything where I'm like, heck yeah, go Kitty Pryde, she's my new favorite. It doesn't go that far, but at the same time, it does not make me hate her. She doesn't do anything that makes me say, oh, that's typical Kitty, I still don't like her. She's just kind of there. She's not hateful, but she's also not doing anything that really makes me want to change my opinion on Kitty. But overall, I really liked Kitty Pryde, Shadow and Flame. I wish we could have had more kind of solo, standalone X-Men minis like this in the mid-2000s. And I know we had a few solo ongoings just a few years ago, like Greg Pak was doing a Storm book. There was a Teenage Cyclops ongoing, and then Magneto had an ongoing. So I know that there were a few of those just a couple years ago, but this was a very quality, very solid book, and I wish we had more stuff a lot like this. Not necessarily an ongoing. Kitty Pryde isn't a character that I personally think could sustain an ongoing series, but she's had a couple of miniseries, like the Mechanics miniseries that Chris Claremont wrote that was kind of in conjunction with Extreme X-Men, or this miniseries. She's a character who you wouldn't want to see her try and have like a 30-issue series, because it probably wouldn't last very long. It would get canceled like within a year, but she can have an ongoing series of minis, I guess you could say. Something like a 5-issue mini every 2 years. I think that would be really cool, and I'd like to see the X-Men do that, especially now in our post-Secret Wars world, the more recent Secret Wars, not the 1980 Secret Wars, in this post-Secret Wars world that we live in, where the X-Men books have kind of been toned down. We used to have like 15 X books a month. Now I think we have like 5 X-Men books a month. It would be cool every once in a while to have a mini-series featuring a character who maybe isn't getting a whole lot of spotlight right now. I think that would be cool to do even now. But overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I think you guys probably would too. It's a fun little action book. It's all ages friendly. If you're looking for something that you want to let your little kid or your nephew or niece read, this is something that they very easily could read. I don't think there's really anything here that would be obtrusive to a little kid getting into comics. This is something that I would give to my child if I had one to read. It's a very solid book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And those are my thoughts on Kitty Pryde, Shadow and Flame. I hope that you guys liked this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will be doing some other videos throughout the week. And then I'll be doing another X-Men miniseries of some kind next week. So you guys should check out all of those videos if you're interested. And I will see you guys in the future. Have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.